The morning light slid across the glass doors of the city hotel and turned the marble floor into a soft mirror. Outside, traffic hummed and a bus sighed at the curb. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee, lemons, and new flowers from the florist who came at dawn. Staff walked quickly but spoke in low voices. The lobby fountain made a gentle sound that covered small mistakes and small worries. Mr. Collins stood at the front desk with a tablet in his hand. He checked boxes on a screen as if the boxes were tiny doors that must all be locked. He had a careful haircut, a tidy tie, and a habit of tapping the counter twice before he spoke. Today he did that more than usual. A high-profile guest was due in the next few hours, a young tech millionaire who had grown famous for a design that people used every day on their phones. The guest's assistant had sent a detailed note, and the note said he preferred to speak in French when he traveled. Mr. Collins had read the note 3 times. He wanted the day to be without one wrong step. Grace pushed a housekeeping cart along the far side of the lobby. The wheels were quiet because she had oiled them herself the week before. She wore the standard uniform dark dress, neat apron, name tag that simply read Grace. She moved with a steady rhythm, straighten a cushion, lift a glass for polishing, place a magazine at a kind angle. Most people did not look at her long, but those who did felt calmer without knowing why. She had a way of placing things where the eye wanted to rest. Grace greeted the doorman with a nod and the concierge with a smile. When the florist carried in 2 heavy buckets, she held the door with her foot and guided one bucket to a safe corner. The florist thanked her. Grace said, "Always happy to help," and then she went back to her route like a quiet tide returning to the shore. On the 2nd floor, she checked a small conference room that the millionaire might use later. She tucked extra pens into a cup because she knew meetings 8 pens the way, a long day 8 minutes. She wiped the whiteboard and, by habit, copied a short sentence on her pocket notepad, "Je pervuator." She had written it there many times over the years even though she already knew it by heart. It was a sentence she loved. It meant, "May I help you?" The rhythm of those words soothed her. Her grandmother had said them often when neighbors came to the door. Grace had grown up hearing 2 streams of language in one kitchen. Her grandmother, who had once lived near the sea where French was part of everyday life, told stories in smooth, rounded vowels. She taught Grace little phrases and old songs. They cooked together with recipe cards that held notes in both English and French. After her grandmother passed, Grace kept a radio that picked up an overnight station. The station played news and short drama pieces in French. Grace listened while ironing or mending uniforms. At first she picked out only a few familiar words. Then she heard more. She practiced softly, the way some people hum along to music. The hotel had never asked staff to list extra skills. There was a form for emergency contacts and one for scheduling, but not one for languages, not one for secret talents. Grace had once mentioned to a coworker that she liked to practice French. The coworker smiled and said, "That's lovely," and nothing further happened. It did not bother Grace. She had work to do, and she did it well. Yet in quiet moments she wondered if there might someday be a moment when her private practice would matter to someone other than herself. Mr. Collins called a short team huddle at 9. He spoke clearly and with urgency. "We are expecting a VIP from Paris," he said. "He values privacy, speed, and attention to detail. Please communicate any issue to the front desk. No improvisation. If you need something, ask me. We want everything flawless." He looked around to be sure that eyes were on him. Heads nodded. The bell captain checked his list of drivers. The kitchen supervisor confirmed that the special plant-based menu was underway. The engineering lead noted a plan to test the secure Wi-Fi in the suite again at 10. Grace stood at the edge of the group with her cart. She had already polished the brass on the 3rd-floor hallway and aligned the welcome mats so they did not snag luggage wheels. She listened, absorbing the tone more than the words. Mr. Collins wanted a day that moved like a well-rehearsed dance. She understood that desire. Clean work was a kind of music. After the huddle, the lobby grew busier. A family checked out and laughed over a photo they had taken with the doorman. A woman in a coral suit asked the concierge about a museum with good textiles. A courier brought a thin package and a thick contract, both for the sales office. Through it all, Mr. Collins kept glancing at the door and then at the clock and then at his tablet as if he were conducting the hour. On her break, Grace sat in a small staff lounge near the service elevator. The room had a vending machine that sometimes gave exact change and sometimes did not. She drank water from her reusable bottle and read a page from a notebook she had filled with simple French notes. She whispered lines to herself and then translated them back to check her sense. The sound of the elevator cables came through the wall like a large cat purring. It made her smile. She pictured her grandmother's kitchen again, the kettle singing, the window bright, the words rolling like marbles in a gentle hand. A colleague, Lena, came in and dropped into a chair. "Big guest today," Lena said. "Yes," Grace replied. "They say he likes to speak French," Lena added. "So I heard," Grace said. Lena opened a small box of crackers. "You speak some too, right?" Grace nodded, a little shy. "Enough for greetings and simple questions." "I practice." "That's wonderful," Lena said. Then someone called her name from the hallway and she hurried out, leaving a few crumbs and the echo of a half-conversation. Grace finished her water, packed her notebook, and washed her hands. She checked her reflection, hair neat, collar straight, name tag clear. She did not plan to use her French today. It was not in her job description, and she respected roles. Still, a small hope sat quietly in her chest. It did not ask for much. It only asked to be ready. Back at the front desk, Mr. Collins reviewed the suite assignment. The room had a view of the river in a corner that caught late afternoon light. He checked that the welcome card had the guest's name spelled correctly with accents in place. He practiced the name in his head. He also opened a translation app on his phone and typed a sentence. The output looked formal but serviceable. He felt better for a moment. Then he remembered that spoken conversation could move faster than any app. He pictured the line of guests that might form if he could not respond quickly. He pictured the owner's face when reading a review that mentioned delays. He tapped the desk twice and told himself to breathe. The kitchen sent up a small tray for tasting, herb salad, a warm grain dish, and a simple dessert made with fruit. Grace passed the tray to a server with a cheerful good luck, and the server smiled with relief. The engineering lead rolled a portable router past her and gave a thumbs up. "Backup plan," he said. Grace nodded. It felt good when teams had backup plans. As noon approached, a text came from the driver: traffic had eased, and arrival would be 15 minutes earlier than planned. Mr. Collins straightened and adjusted his tie. He reminded the Bell staff about the guest's preference for minimal attention. "Support, not fuss," he said. They understood. Grace finished freshening the lobby powder room and checked the family lounge for stray cups. She found a child's glove near the bookshelf and brought it to the lost and found drawer, where she wrote a quick note with the time and place. She noticed her own handwriting firm, neat, a little old-fashioned, and thought of her grandmother's recipe cards again. On impulse, she opened her pocket notebook and wrote one more line: "Je suis là si vous avez besoin de quelque chose." "I am here if you need anything." She closed the notebook and slipped it back into her apron. The hotel doors parted, and a rush of warm air came in from the street along with a tall young man in a linen jacket and a simple scarf. His steps were quick, his eyes alert. Behind him came a second person with 2 cases on small wheels. The doorman greeted them politely and stepped aside. Mr. Collins moved forward with his practiced smile and his tablet raised like a shield. The young man spoke first, in a smooth stream of French. He had the unhurried tone of someone who expects to be understood. Mr. Collins managed the first greeting with the line he had typed earlier. He could say welcome. He could say the hotel name. He could say his own name. Then the stream of French widened, questions about an early check-in, the meeting room, the secure Wi-Fi, and a shipment that needed to be cleared at customs that afternoon. The second person added a detail about a document that was in an email that had not arrived. Words began to fly like bright birds. Mr. Collins caught some and missed others. He opened the app again, but the pace outran the screen. A couple waiting to check in shifted from one foot to the other. A child asked his mother a question in a curious stage whisper. Grace stood by the far column and watched the scene. She felt the shape of the French sentences even when she could not hear every word clearly. They were not difficult, only quick. Her heart began to tap, not from fear but from the sense that a door was opening. She looked down at her cart, at the neatly folded cloths, at the pen in the caddy. She looked up again. The guest's face had not turned impatient yet, but the muscles around his mouth had set the way faces do when they prepare to be disappointed. She did not rush forward. She waited 2 breaths to be sure she was not imagining the need. In those 2 breaths she remembered a kitchen, a radio, a grandmother's kind voice, and the sentence she loved best, "May I help you?" She felt the small hope in her chest become a steady light, the kind that guides a person down a hallway at night. Then she eased her cart to the side, stepped from behind the column, and moved within a respectful distance of the desk, her hands folded, her voice ready but still. The elevator chimed softly. The fountain kept its gentle sound. The city outside went on with its daily noise. Inside the hotel, one quiet room attendant knew more than anyone expected, and the day had reached the moment just before a change. The next minutes moved quickly, the way a river moves around stones. The young guest continued in clear, steady French. He was not rude, only sure of his pace. His assistant added short notes, also in French, about a meeting time and a delivery with special labels. Mr. Collins nodded more than he spoke. He typed on his phone, waited for the translation app to catch up, and then showed a screen that did not quite match the question. The guest tried again, slower now, and pointed toward the lift, then toward the meeting room sign, then toward the reception printer. He had a kind face, but the muscles near his jaw set a little tighter. The line at the front desk began to lengthen. A couple who had flown overnight needed a key. A local client came to pay for an event and had a driver waiting outside. The concierge took on 2 extra questions to reduce the pressure, but people still looked toward Mr. Collins because he stood in the center and because the famous guest stood with him. The room grew louder by a few delicate degrees. "Call an interpreter," the bell captain whispered from the side. Mr. Collins checked his watch. "How long?" "Minimum 30 minutes, the bell captain said after a quick search on his screen. "Maybe more." "Too long," Mr. Collins said, almost to himself. The doorman quietly offered water to the guest and his assistant. They thanked him, but the guest kept speaking, now about an email that had not arrived. He used a word that meant attachment, and he used another that meant customs stamp. The assistant mentioned certificates and made a small shape with his fingers, as if showing the size of a card. Mr. Collins typed a new phrase into the app and held up the result. The app had chosen a very formal tone that would fit a letter, not a quick talk in a lobby. The guest read it and smiled politely, then repeated his question with more detail. He pointed to the printer again. The printer, as if feeling watched, chose that moment to flash a low-toner message. Grace stood near the column with her cart. She had edged closer so she could hear words well enough to make sure her understanding was true. She could sense the shape of the problem. Early check-in was needed because a video call had been bumped earlier. The meeting room time needed a small change so it would not crash into the call. The secure Wi-Fi needed to be set with a private password that would not rotate during the call. The shipment from the airport held a small piece of equipment that would be used later that day, and customs needed the right paper to release it. None of this was impossible. It only needed clear talk and a few calls to the right people. Grace also sensed something else. Mr. Collins was trying to protect the guest from seeing the hotel's small errors. He wanted to be smooth. But smoothness in a real day is not the same as smoothness in a plan on a tablet. Real days have printer toner, drivers who hit red lights, and emails that travel slower than anyone thinks they should. The concierge, who had studied a little French at school, tried to help. He said a few short sentences with care, and the guest listened kindly. The concierge could manage one moment, "We will check, and please sign here," but he could not hold all the pieces at once. He looked relieved and a bit embarrassed. "I am sorry," he said in English, smiling toward Mr. Collins. "I can handle menus, not customs forms." A server passed by with a tray and caught Grace's eye. The server mouthed, "You okay?" Grace nodded. She was okay. She was also thinking hard. She respected roles and she liked order. But she also believed that real order was not silence, it was the right kind of action at the right moment. The kitchen supervisor called the desk. Mr. Collins picked up and held a hand over the phone as if that would hold time in place. "Yes," he said. The kitchen supervisor explained that the special menu was ready, but there was a small question: was sans gluten also requested, or only plant-based? The assistant's earlier note had 2 lines that might mean different things. Mr. Collins looked from the phone to the guest to the app to the printer and back to the phone. "Hold, please," he said, and set the receiver down gently. He did not want his tone to carry stress across the line. At that moment, the engineering lead arrived with the backup router, a coil of cable over his shoulder. "We tested the suite," he said softly. "The secure network is good. I can set a fixed password for 2 hours around the call. Just need the time window." He looked from Mr. Collins to the guest, understood the language block, and stood ready like a quiet anchor. A second message arrived for Mr. Collins. The driver who had brought the guest reported that the customs desk at the airport would accept a printout of the equipment list with the hotel's stamp on it, as long as the serial number matched the case label. The driver could go back to the airport, but time would be tight. The printout had to be ready in the next 20 minutes to be sure. Mr. Collins read the message and looked at the printer with its blinking toner light. The printer seemed to blink back with unhelpful cheer. Grace rolled her card a little closer, then paused. She touched the edge of her pocket notebook for courage. She remembered her grandmother's voice, "Kindness is speed. It moves you past delay." Grace breathed once, twice. Her heart beat calmly. She could do this. She also knew that stepping forward without being asked could upset a manager who felt he must control the room. She did not want to embarrass anyone. She wanted to help the guest and help the team. A small child in the line began to fuss. His mother handed him a book from her bag. He dropped it by accident, and it slid under Grace's cart. Grace bent, picked up the book, and returned it with a warm smile. The child smiled back. The lobby, even under pressure, still had room for small human moments. Grace felt comfort in that. She took it as a sign to act with care. "Perhaps water," she whispered to the server. The server nodded and brought 2 glasses. The guest and the assistant accepted them and said a quick thank you in French. The words were simple and smooth, and Grace heard the tone shift by one small step toward calm. She did not answer. "Not yet." Mr. Collins tried another line with the app, then called over the concierge for a quick question. He asked if course could mean errand in this context, and the concierge said yes, but it could also mean shopping or race, depending on how it was used. They both smiled, then sighed. Language was a wide river, and today's boat was small. A new small problem joined the others. The hotel stamp that made papers official had been moved from the sales office to the finance office after an audit last week. The sales assistant, who knew where it was, had not started her shift yet. The finance office was locked for a morning check. The key sat with a manager who was in a meeting upstairs. The bell captain sent a message to find a spare. Someone said they knew where one was for emergencies, but they did not say exactly where. The assistant to the guest checked his watch. He spoke softly to his boss, and the boss nodded. The assistant then asked, still in French, if the hotel could send a message to the meeting organizer to shift the time by 15 minutes. He used a phrase that meant to push a little. He also asked for a quiet room near the lift but not by the ice machine. He said it with a half smile, as if to show he knew it was a very specific wish and he was asking nicely, not demanding. Grace could do this, she thought again. She could do it without fuss. She had already memorized the extension for the kitchen, engineering, and the small meeting rooms. She knew the difference between the two lifts that looked the same but did not sound the same. She knew when the ice machine on level 6 made a slightly louder refill sound, which happened twice a day. She knew where spare toner sat in the supply closet because she had once helped carry a box there on a busy day. Lena appeared at Grace's elbow. "You okay?" she whispered. "Yes," Grace said. Lena followed Grace's gaze to the desk and the guest. "You could help," she said under her breath. "I know you can." She touched Grace's arm lightly and then added, "But I also know the rules." "Your call." Grace thought about the rules. She liked rules that were built around care. She did not like rules that were built around fear. Today's pressure felt like it came from fear, fear of a bad review, fear of a wrong step, fear of losing a contract the owner wanted. Care would move faster. Care would say, "I can help now, and I will keep everyone's dignity safe." Mr. Collins used the app once more and then tried English, slow and polite. "One moment, please," he said. "We will fix." The guest nodded in a friendly way but checked his watch again. He took out his phone and scrolled, then frowned. The email still had not arrived. The assistant said a phrase that meant, "Perhaps it is in the spam box," and then shook his head because, of course, everyone had already checked that. Grace looked at the printer. She knew where the spare toner sat. It was 2 doors behind the desk in a closet with a top shelf that required a step stool. She had the stool on her cart. She also knew that changing toner did not require a long meeting, it required 5 calm steps. She moved her cart carefully. "Would you like me to change the toner?" she asked the front desk agent on the side, quietly enough that it felt like an offer, not a correction. "Yes, please," the agent said, very relieved. Grace took the step stool, opened the closet, and reached the box. She changed the cartridge with clean hands and a steady motion. The printer woke with a soft whir, like a small wind. The low toner light went out. The agent gave her a grateful nod. 1 stone in the river had moved. Across the lobby, the kitchen called back about the menu. The supervisor sounded calm but needed a clear answer. Grace could hear enough of the French requests to know the guest did not need a separate gluten-free plan, he only needed plant-based meals with simple ingredients. But it was not her place yet to make that call. She wrote a small note and handed it to Mr. Collins, "Plant-based only, simple spices, no wheat needed as long as rice or quinoa is fine. I can confirm in French if you'd like." She did not underline anything. She did not push the note at him. She placed it so he could read it or ignore it without pressure. Mr. Collins read the note. His eyes flicked up to Grace and then back to the guest and the assistant and the line and the clock. The engineering lead waited with the cable. The bell captain held his phone with a number ready for the customs desk. The concierge had a polite half-smile fixed in place like a paperclip, useful but not very strong. The owner was not in the room, but it felt as if the owner's attention hung in the air like a portrait. Time did its quiet work. The minute hand moved. The guest kept his good manners. The assistant kept his small notes and quick checks. The lobby kept its gentle fountain sound, but now there was a fine thread of tension under it. Even the flowers on the console table seemed to hold their breath. Grace thought of her grandmother again, of the way she used to lean forward when a neighbor needed help filling out a form or calling an office. "We do not step in to take the story," her grandmother would say. We step in to make the path clear so the person can walk it. Grace loved that line. She had written it once, in English, on the first page of her notebook. She looked at Mr. Collins. He was a good manager who wanted a good day. He did not want to lose face. He also did not want to lose a client. He had a choice to make: keep trying the app and hope the guest stayed patient, or allow a different kind of help. Grace could see the choice in the small lines at the corners of his eyes. Another guest in line checked his watch and shifted his weight. The assistant touched his boss's arm and showed him a calendar alert. The video call was now less than an hour away. To be on time, the guest needed to be in the suite within 15 minutes, with the Wi-Fi set and the customs paper printing. A small delay now would double later like interest. Grace felt a steady calm rise in her chest. She was not rushing. She was ready. She placed her hand lightly on the edge of the desk so she would not surprise anyone. Then, in a clear, respectful voice that carried just enough to be heard by the two people who needed it most, she said to Mr. Collins, "May I try something?" Mr. Collins looked at her. He saw the step stool put away, the printer working, the neat cart, the quiet confidence in her posture. He saw a person who did not want attention but wanted the day to move again. For a breath, he seemed to weigh his pride against the needs of the moment. Grace waited. She was not a storm. She was a door, half open, offering a way through. The guest's eyes went from Mr. Collins to Grace and back. He did not yet know what would happen. The assistant set his pen down, as if making space for a new line in the scene. Grace drew one slow breath. She felt the words she had practiced for years line up in her mind like friends at a table, ready to be useful. Then she lifted her chin a little, ready to speak the language that would make this busy morning gentle again. Grace stepped one pace closer, kept her hands still, and looked at the guest with a warm, steady face. She spoke in clear, gentle French. Her voice was not loud, but it carried because it was calm. She greeted the guest, said her name, and said she worked here. Then she asked if she could help organize the next steps so he could rest and make his call on time. The change in the room was like a window opening. The guest's shoulders lowered. His assistant let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The fountain still sang, but now the sound felt friendly again. Grace listened first. She did not rush to show what she knew. She asked two short questions in French to be sure she understood the order of needs. The guest answered in a smooth stream that matched her pace. Then Grace repeated the list back to confirm, also in French, but simple and quick. You need early check-in now. You need the meeting room time moved by 15 minutes. You need the secure Wi-Fi with a fixed password for the video call. You need plant-based meals, simple style. You need a customs paper with the serial number to release the equipment. Do I have everything? The guest smiled with relief. Yes, he said. Exactly that. He also added a detail, a quiet room near the lift but away from the ice machine if possible. He said it with a small, hopeful look. Grace nodded. Understood. She turned to the team, switching to English without changing her calm tone. We can do this. To the engineering lead, set a fixed password for a 2-hour window starting 40 minutes from now. Print the password on a small card, please. To the concierge, call events and move the meeting room by 15 minutes. I will tell the guest I have asked for this, and you can confirm to the organizer. Also, please add the change to the sign. To the front desk agent, open the suite now. I will do a quick check for quiet, no hum from the ice machine, no vent noise. To the kitchen supervisor on the phone, plant-based only. Simple spices. Rice or quinoa are both fine. Please add one light soup and fruit for later. Thank you. To Mr. Collins, gentle and respectful, the customs paper needs our stamp and a serial number photo. May I handle the form and release with the driver? Mr. Collins looked at her with something new in his eyes. It was not just surprise. It was Trust waking up. Yes, please, he said. Thank you. Grace turned back to the guest and his assistant and spoke French again, still simple and precise. Please forward the equipment list to this email, she said, pointing to the front desk card. Also, may we take a photo of the serial number now? It will help the customs desk match the paper. The assistant nodded and pulled out his phone. He took the photo of the label on the case. He forwarded the email with the list. Grace asked the front desk to print the email as soon as it arrived. The printer, now with fresh toner, began to hum. Papers slid out clean and dark. The bell captain stepped forward. The driver is ready, he said. Perfect, Grace replied. We will stamp and sign in 2 minutes. She shifted slightly toward the side desk, where a small box now Saturday and the spare stamp, she asked softly. A desk agent lifted the lid. Inside lay the emergency stamp that someone had remembered. Grace thanked them and did not make a show of it. She stamped the paper with steady hands, checked the impression, and signed Mr. Collins's name neatly under his eyes after he gave a quick nod. Then she added the date and the hotel address on letterhead. She handed the set to the bell captain with a clear line, please ask the driver to go straight to customs, match the serial, and call us if they need a second copy. Thank you. The bell captain moved with purpose. One knot in the rope was now untied. Grace turned to the guest again. You must be tired, she said in French. May I offer tea or water while we prepare the room? He chose water. She asked the server to bring it with a small bowl of plain nuts. No sugar for now, she added kindly. The guest laughed a little and said that was wise. Next, Grace checked the room. She did not leave the lobby in a rush, because she knew speed can make people worry. She walked at a natural pace to the lift with the front desk keys, the engineering lead at her side with the small router card, and the server carrying the bottled water behind them. As they rode up, Grace explained in English to the engineering lead, we want the room near the lift but away from ice. Level 7 on the riverside should be best. The ice machine on 6 refills louder at noon. They stepped out on 7. Grace listened at the door she had in mind. She knew the building sounds the way some people know the voices of friends. The hum was low and steady. Good. She unlocked the door, checked the windows, checked the vents, checked the desk chair, checked the rug edge that sometimes curled. She traded 2 wooden hangers for padded ones from her own supply because she knew silk snagged. She placed 2 bottles of still water side by side on the desk, labels facing front, not as decoration but as a small sign of care. The engineering lead set the fixed password and made a quick test on his phone. He handed Grace the small printed card with the network name and the password in clear, large letters. 2 hours from now, he said. No rotation. Thank you, Grace replied. She set the card in a small tent holder so it would not slide under papers. She called the front desk. Room is ready. Please send up the guest. She then walked back to the lift, still calm, still steady. In the lobby, Mr. Collins had kept the line moving with the help of the concierge. Now he saw Grace step out of the lift and gave a small nod to the doorman. The guest and his assistant stood, each holding a glass of water that was now half empty instead of full. They looked less like a problem to solve and more like people in a good day. Grace spoke in French again. Your room is ready. It is quiet and near the lift. The Wi-Fi is set with a fixed password for your call. The meeting room is shifted by 15 minutes, and the customs paper is already on its way. If any email arrives late, I can help print it upstairs while you rest. The guest's face changed from worrying about time to time has a path. He thanked her with warm words and a short bow of his head. The assistant repeated the thanks and added, you have no idea how much you just saved our morning. Grace smiled. I have a small idea, she said softly. It made them both laugh. She gestured for the bell staff to take the cases and led the group to the lift. Mr. Collins fell in step beside them. He did not try to take over. Instead, he said, "Grace will be your point of contact for the next hour," in his best careful English, and then let Grace repeat it in French so it was smooth. In the lift, the assistant asked if the kitchen could send something warm but not heavy about an hour after the call. Grace said yes and noted it. The guest asked if the meeting room had a whiteboard and 2 markers. Grace said yes and added, "I placed extra markers." The assistant and the guest exchanged a quick smile, the kind people share when they feel truly seen. They reached the room. Grace showed the desk, the password card, and the small tray where she had set 2 tea bags and a kettle. "If you prefer fresh mint, we can send it," she offered. The assistant accepted. Grace called the kitchen and asked for a small pot of mint and hot water. She then checked the desk chair height and raised it 1 notch because the guest was tall. The assistant unpacked a small, neat case with cables. He asked, in French, if the hotel could provide a simple adapter. Grace knew the exact drawer in engineering where spare adapters lived. She told him she would bring one in 5 minutes. She also asked, "Would you like the Do Not Disturb sign on during your call?" He said yes, and she turned it. Before leaving the room, Grace pointed to the phone. "Dial 0 and ask for Grace," she said in French. "I will be at the desk if you need anything." She paused, then added a light line that her grandmother would have liked, "Simple problems want simple paths. We will keep it that way." The guest smiled with real ease now. Grace and Mr. Collins stepped back into the hall. The door closed softly. The 2 of them stood in that small space where work and feeling meet. "Grace," Mr. Collins said, voice low. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she replied with the same calm tone she had used for the guest. "We have everything moving. The driver will call in about 30 minutes. When he does, the customs desk may ask if the hotel will hold the equipment in a locked room. I can sign for it and place it in the storage closet near events if that helps." "That would help," Mr. Collins said. He looked a little lighter, as if he had put down a box he had carried too far on his own. Back at the lobby, Grace picked up the adapter from engineering, then returned to the suite and left it on the desk with a small note, "Adapter for the call. Grace." She did not knock again because they were on a test call already. She then went to the concierge and wrote 3 short French lines on a sticky note, "1 moment, please, we will check now, and thank you for your patience." She added the simple, friendly versions, not the formal ones. "These help when it is busy," she said. The concierge grinned and stuck the note near the screen. "I owe you," he whispered. The kitchen sent up the mint and later, a light soup. The server returned with a quiet face and a thumbs up. "He said thank you in French," the server told Grace, proud of the exchange. Grace smiled. The bell captain texted, the driver had reached customs, the serial number matched, the officer would release the case once the driver returned with the paper copy. 10 more minutes, the bell captain wrote. Grace shared the update with Mr. Collins and then with the guest by a short note slipped under the door, "Customs release in 10 minutes. Your equipment will be here before the call. G." She checked the meeting room. The sign now showed the new time. She placed 2 fresh markers, a clean eraser, a small bottle of water, and a cloth to wipe the glass table after the call. She opened the blinds a little so light would be kind to the eyes but not bright on screens. Then she returned to the front desk. The lobby had returned to its natural hum. The family with the child had checked in already. The local client had paid and gone. The florist had come back to fix 1 leaf in the arrangement because that is what florists do, they see small things and set them right. Mr. Collins stood with his tablet at a lower angle now. He was not using it as a shield. He was using it as a tool. He looked at Grace. "For the next hour, anything in French goes through you," he said. Agreed. It was not a command. It was respect. Agreed, Grace said. He hesitated, then added, after we finish this rush, let's talk about listing staff skills. We should know the gifts people carry. Grace nodded. That would be good, she said. She did not make a big show of the moment. She let it be simple and true. The driver returned with the equipment. Grace signed and placed the case in the small locked storage room near events, as planned. She put a clear tag on it with the guest's name and the time. She sent a note to the suite in French, "Your equipment is safe downstairs. We can bring it up whenever you want." Grace. The assistant called the desk and asked, in French, if they could have it 10 minutes before the call. Grace said yes. She arranged for the Bell staff to bring it at that time, quiet and smooth. When she hung up, Lena came by and gave her a quick, proud grin. "You were brilliant," she whispered. Grace shook her head. "We were a team," she said. "Printer, router, kitchen, bell desk, concierge, driver, all of it." Lena laughed. "Still, someone had to tie the threads." Grace looked down at her hands. They were steady and clean. "It felt like tying a ribbon," she said. "Not a knot. A ribbon." A few minutes later, the guest stepped out of the lift with the assistant and the case. They were ready for the meeting room. Grace met them there, opened the door, and showed the setup. The markers were where they should be. The chair was the right height. The network card sat at the edge of the table, easy to see. The air felt fresh. The noise from the hallway was very low. The guest turned to Grace and spoke in French with warmth. He thanked her again, not just for the language but for the way she held the morning together. He said he would like to send a note to the hotel owner about her help. He asked how to spell her full name. She told him, and then said, "If you send a note, please thank the team too." He agreed. They shook hands, a simple human gesture, and Grace stepped back to let them work. That was the turning point. The whole hotel felt it without anyone needing to say the words. The panic had passed. The work was the same, but the spirit was different. People looked at Grace and did not only see a room attendant. They saw a colleague who carried a skill and used it with care. Mr. Collins saw that, too. He stood a little taller, not because of pride, but because he had learned something useful in real time. Grace returned to her cart. She checked her list for the afternoon. Rooms still needed to be made ready. A family would need extra towels. A traveler would ask for a sewing kit. Life would keep moving. But now there was a new note in the day, like a soft bell added to a song. It said, "Hidden skill, found at the right moment, can change the shape of a whole morning." She tucked her pocket notebook back into her apron. On its first page was a line she had written long ago, "May I help you?" Today, she had said it in another language. The meaning was the same. The result was real. The video call began on time. From the hallway, Grace could hear only a faint rise and fall of voices through the closed door of the meeting room. The assistant had asked for the equipment 10 minutes early, and the Bell staff had brought it quietly. The fixed Wi-Fi password worked. The whiteboard markers wrote clearly. The small bowl of mint leaves gave a light, clean scent in the corner. For a while, everything moved as they had planned. Then a small issue arrived, the kind that tests whether a plan is real. The assistant stepped out and spoke in a hushed voice. There was a slight echo on the call. It was not loud, but it made the speaker repeat a word now and then. Grace walked in with him, looked at the room, and saw that the glass tabletop was reflecting sound in a bright way. She remembered something the engineering lead had once said about soft surfaces. She took 2 folded table runners from the events shelf, laid them gently on the glass under the laptop and the small mic, and asked the assistant to test again. The echo softened at once. The assistant smiled and gave her a thumbs up. It was a small fix, but it carried care. While the call went on, Grace returned to the lobby. The usual rhythm had returned, but now there was a new rhythm behind it, quick looks, small whispers, glances in her direction. Most were friendly. A few were not. She was used to being unseen, now being seen made some people curious, and curiosity sometimes came out sideways. Two co-workers near the front desk spoke in low voices. One said, "Impressive, but not really her department." The other replied, "Maybe that is changing." Their words were not cruel. They were uncertain. Change often wears that sound at first. At the staff door, an older colleague from guest relations stopped Grace with a polite smile that had a hard edge. "We appreciate initiative," she said, "but next time you should wait for management to ask. The chain of command exists for a reason." Her tone carried a lesson from many years. Grace nodded and answered in the same calm way she used with guests. "I understand. I stepped in only when asked and kept Mr. Collins informed. I hope we can learn from today and write a clear note for next time." The older colleague softened a little. She did not agree, not yet, but she saw that Grace was not trying to take someone's place, she was trying to help the work. Mr. Collins called a quick check-in by the service corridor. His tie was slightly out of line, a rare sight for him. "We are doing well," he said, "and we are also going to be honest. We did not have a process for this." Grace made a safe bridge. "Thank you, Grace. After the rush, I want to write a simple guide, who calls whom, where the stamp lives, what to do about Wi-Fi, and who has extra languages." "Agreed." Heads nodded. The concierge looked relieved. The engineering lead gave a small, friendly salute with his pen. Not everyone eased so fast. Later, in the staff lounge, Grace heard two people from another shift speaking about tips. They said the guest would probably send one and wondered who would get it. "Front desk always gets the big ones," one said. "Housekeeping gets the thanks." Grace did not take offense. She knew money could make even kind people tense. She also knew a good way to handle it was to be clear. If a gift came because many people helped, she would ask Mr. Collins to put it through the shared fund that bought small things like better step stools, spare phone chargers, and an extra kettle for the lounge. That way the gift would become useful to everyone. She wrote herself a note to suggest this later. The call ended well. The guest and the assistant came out with easy faces and quick steps. It went smoothly, the assistant told Mr. Collins in English, and then he turned to Grace and said the same in French with warmer words. "Thank you for the table trick," he added, tapping the air above the glass. "It saved us from repeating the same points." Grace smiled and said she was glad to help. The guest asked if they could have a light lunch in the suite. Grace called the kitchen and requested the simple menu they had planned. She made sure the flavors were gentle because long calls can tire the mind and the tongue. After lunch was sent up, an email arrived from the guest to the hotel owner. Mr. Collins saw it first because the owner's assistant had forwarded it to him. The message praised the woman who rescued our morning with calm, clear French and practical sense. It also suggested that the hotel could benefit by listing staff skills where guests can see them. Mr. Collins read the email, exhaled, and then walked to Grace. "You should see this," he said, and handed her the screen. Grace read it, felt heat come to her face, and said, "Thank you for sharing." She did not dance or make a big noise. She let the words land and sit quietly, like a bird resting on a branch. The owner called soon after. Mr. Collins stood straighter and listened for a while. He gave simple answers, yes, the guest was happy, yes, the team had responded, yes, they would capture what worked today. Then he added, and there is a staff member we should support with training. He glanced at Grace, and his eyes held pride, but a good kind, the kind you share, not the kind you hold for yourself. When he hung up, he said, the owner wants HR to start a hidden skills list. We will add languages, tech comfort, first aid certificates, and anything else that helps guests. We will make it normal to share what we know. Grace nodded. That will help many people, she replied. Word traveled, as it always does. Some staff were excited. Lena hugged Grace in the hall and said, "My cousin speaks a little Italian. I never thought it mattered. Maybe she'll apply now." The engineering lead laughed and said, "I can add soldering small things if it ever helps a guest." The concierge said, "Please include polite French phrases for me. And please teach me how to say 'we are on it' in a friendly way." Grace wrote it down for him in simple words and helped him sound it out. They laughed when his first try came out like a song, then he tried again, and it was clear. But with praise came pushback. A message arrived from a senior coordinator who was off that day. It asked why a room attendant had taken the lead with a VIP and noted that boundary lines exist to protect service quality and staff roles. Mr. Collins answered with care. He explained the timeline, the decisions, and the result. He attached the guest's email and a draft of the new guide. He added one line that mattered: "We value roles, and we also value real help at the right moment." Today showed both can live together. He sent the message and then sighed. Change is work, even when it is good. The cost for Grace was simple but real. Her day got heavier. Along with rooms to turn and small fixes, she now became the person people asked for: French words, small translations, and quick checks. She did not mind helping, but she knew the shape of her energy. She paced herself. When 3 questions came at once, she said, "I will help you, and I will help you next. Please give me 5 minutes." People accepted that line when it was said with a friendly tone. She also took her full break. She ate, drank water, and stretched her hands. Care is not just for guests, it is also for the worker who wants to give good care again tomorrow. In the afternoon, a small mistake happened, and it was hers. She had asked the kitchen to send a pot of mint plus a small extra cup of hot water for refills. The server placed the pot near the edge of the desk, and a drop ran down onto the wood. It left a faint mark like a tear. Grace saw it at once. She did not blame the server. She brought a soft cloth, dabbed gently, and asked engineering for a tiny bit of oil approved for that surface. She rubbed carefully until the mark faded. Then she left a friendly note for the team: "When sending hot pots, please place them on the felt mat. Thank you." No one got in trouble. A small new habit was born. Late in the day, HR sent a short form for pilot testing the skills map. It asked for languages, software comfort, and other useful notes. Grace read it in the staff lounge. She felt shy typing French, fluent in daily conversation, can handle forms and calls. She added, basic computer forms, fast with printers, calm in fast moments. She put the form in the tray. She wondered if her grandmother would smile to see her name next to those words. She thought she would. Before evening, the guest stopped by the desk on his way out for a short walk. He thanked Mr. Collins and then turned to Grace. In French, he said, "Your help felt like sunlight through a cloud. I will remember it." Grace answered lightly, "It was a team day. I only opened a window." He laughed. He asked if the hotel had a language badge program. "Not yet," Grace said, "but we may soon." He nodded and said he liked the idea. Then he left, quick and cheerful, like someone whose work had gone right. After he left, a colleague who had been doubtful came to Grace with a different tone. "I have something to admit," she said. "At first I thought you were trying to do 2 jobs at once. Today I saw you did one job very well and used a second skill to support it. That is different. I can respect that." Grace smiled and said, "Thank you for telling me. I am still learning how to help without stepping on toes. Your advice will help me." The colleague nodded, and some of the tightness in her shoulders left. Mr. Collins printed the first draft of the new guide. It was 1 page, simple and clear, with short lines: "If a guest speaks a language we share, we connect a fluent staff member with the manager's OK. We keep a list of who speaks what at the desk and in the staff lounge. The hotel stamp lives in finance, key with the duty manager, a spare is in the side safe. For customs releases, print serial numbers, stamp, sign, send driver, confirm by text. For secure calls, engineering fixes a password window and prints a clear card. For small phrases, a card with friendly lines sits at the desk. He handed the paper to Grace. "What's missing?" he asked. Grace read it line by line. "One thing," she said. "Add, we take breaks so we can keep helping well. It seems small, but it matters." He added it. Then he said, "I also want name badges to list languages. Would you be comfortable with that?" Grace thought for a second and said, "Yes, as long as it is simple. I don't want it to look like a parade. Just a small line, English, French." Mr. Collins smiled. "Simple is our style," he said. The day began to taper. The florist returned once more to collect empty buckets. The doorman told a story about a guest who once sang in the lobby late at night, kindly, not loudly. Lena finished her shift and waved. The concierge practiced his new French lines under his breath. The engineering lead logged the new Wi-Fi card process into his book. Before going home, Grace took 10 minutes in the empty meeting room with a notepad. She wrote a tiny plan for a French Basics for Service mini-session, greetings, 3 polite questions, 3 warm answers, and a line for "Please give me a moment and I will find help." She imagined teaching it before the next busy day. She could do it in 15 minutes. No long speeches. Just tools that fit in a pocket. She tucked the note into her pocket and looked at the whiteboard. There was a faint echo in the room now that it was empty again. She smiled and smoothed a hand over the soft runners on the glass table. Quiet, she thought, is not just silence. Quiet is when people know what to do. The last thing she did before clocking out was to check the lost and found drawer. The child's glove was still there. She wrote one more line on its tag, "Ask at the desk." "We saved it for you." She liked the word saved. It sounded gentle, like a hand steadying someone on a step. When she walked out into the evening air, the city had a warm, late glow. The day had been full. It had brought praise and worry, kindness and doubt, fixes and new questions. It had asked her to be brave in a quiet way. Tomorrow would ask again. She felt ready to answer. Back in the lobby, Mr. Collins placed the one-page guide on the staff board with a small pin. He straightened it by a millimeter. Then he looked toward the door where Grace had gone out. He did not say anything out loud. But in his mind, he said the line that would carry the hotel forward, "See the person, not just the position." And then, as if the building itself agreed, the fountain gave one more soft, bright sound. Morning came with soft light on the hotel's glass doors and the quiet song of the fountain. Grace arrived a little early, as she often did, because she liked to start a day before the day started her. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and fresh flowers. A new sheet of paper was pinned to the staff board near the service corridor. It was the skills map Mr. Collins had promised. Names lined up in clear print. Next to each name were small notes, languages, certificates, secret talents that were no longer secret. Next to Grace were 2 simple words, English, French. Seeing them there felt like opening a window. Fresh air came in. Mr. Collins stepped out from behind the desk with a smile that reached his eyes. "Good morning," he said. "HR approved a plan. We'll start cross-training next week, 1 half day for you in guest relations, and we'll cover your housekeeping hours with a float. Also, the owner has offered to pay for language certification if you want it." Grace felt warm and calm at the same time. "Thank you," she said. "I would like the certification. And I want to keep some room time too. I like the quiet work. It keeps me steady." "We can do both," Mr. Collins said. "Steady is what we want." 15 minutes later, staff circled near the meeting room for a short French basics for service session. Grace held a tiny notepad, not because she needed it, but because it made others feel the lesson would be small and kind. She taught 3 greetings, 3 friendly questions, and 3 simple answers. People smiled as they tried the sounds. The concierge laughed at himself, then tried again, and his words came out clear enough to carry care. Lena repeated a line slowly and then faster until it felt like walking. The engineering lead learned how to say "one moment, I'm on it," and looked as proud as if he had fixed a broken elevator. The older colleague from guest relations stood in the back at first, arms crossed. Halfway through, she uncrossed them, stepped forward, and asked how to say, "Would you like me to write that down?" Grace showed her. The woman said it twice, nodded, and gave Grace a small, honest smile that said, "We will work together." The guide Mr. Collins had written was now a neat card by the front desk. It named where the stamp lived, who kept the spare, how to set a fixed Wi-Fi password, what to print for customs, and who spoke which language on which shift. A second small card sat by the keyboard with warm phrases in French and their easy sounds. The spare toner box was clearly labeled on the supply shelf. A felt mat sat by the tray for hot pots so that no drop would mark the desk again. None of it was fancy. All of it made the day lighter. By mid-morning, the hotel had a chance to test its new ease. A couple from Montreal arrived early with sleepy faces and careful smiles. They mixed English and French the way people mix tea and milk softly, without thinking. The concierge greeted them in English, then used one short French line to show welcome. Their shoulders lowered at once. He checked them in, asked in gentle French if they wanted a quiet room or a bright room, and found what they liked. Grace watched from the side and felt a small spark of happiness. Help did not have to be loud to be strong. Another staff member added a skill to the board at lunch. The bellhop, Jamal, wrote basic Mandarin can greet and guide. People nodded and said, "That will help." The doorman, who had never said much about his outside life, added, "Knows a bit of sign language." He showed the sign for welcome and thank you, and a server clapped in delight. The kitchen supervisor wrote, "Can read simple dietary labels in Italian," because her grandmother had come from a town near Milan and taught her as a child. The board began to look like a small map of hidden doors the hotel could open when needed. After the lunch rush, the guest from the day before returned to the lobby with his assistant. He had a soft scarf again and the light step of someone whose plans went well. He thanked Mr. Collins for the team's support and then turned to Grace with the kind of gratitude that does not need big words. In French, he said, "I brought you a small gift." He handed her a thin book, short stories in French and English side by side, with a ribbon as a bookmark. Inside, he had written a line, "For Grace, whose calm made time kind." Grace touched the ribbon and thought of her own words from yesterday about tying a ribbon, not a knot. She thanked him and promised to share the stories with anyone who wanted to practice. "Please do," he said, and smiled. A message arrived soon after from the owner. The guest's review was live. It praised a hotel that listens quickly and acts kindly and named a staff member who spoke to us in our language and moved many small things into place. There was a second note, the owner would visit next week to meet the team and see the new process. Mr. Collins shared the message at the afternoon huddle. He did not point to himself, he pointed to the team. "We did this together," he said. "We will keep doing it together." Small doubts did not disappear forever, they rarely do. The senior coordinator who had written the cautionary message stopped by to talk with Grace face to face. "I've been thinking," she said. "Boundary lines help. But good lines have gates. You used a gate yesterday. You checked with Mr. Collins, and you kept us all informed." "Thank you." Grace answered gently, "Thank you for saying that. If you ever see me closing a gate I should open or opening one I should close, please tell me. I want to learn." The coordinator nodded. 2 people had become partners, not just names on a schedule. That afternoon, a small kindness came full circle. The family with the child who had dropped a book returned to ask about a lost glove. Grace opened the drawer and lifted the glove with the tag she had written, "Ask at the desk." "We saved it for you." The child grinned and put it on, then looked at the fountain as if it had also helped. The mother thanked Grace and said, "You saved more than a glove yesterday, I think." Grace smiled and said, "We try to save minutes. They help everything else." On the second day of the new plan, the badge company delivered thin name tags with space for a single line under the name. Grace's badge now read, "Grace English, French." It was not a banner, not a brag. It was a quiet door. Guests glanced at it the way people glance at a helpful sign on a path. Mr. Collins set up a clear way to handle gifts and tips related to team help. If someone wrote a thank you note and left a gift, it would go to a shared fund unless a guest insisted it was for one person only. The shared fund would buy small tools that made service kinder, more phone chargers, a better step stool, a set of felt mats, spare adapters, and a few simple language cards for the lounge. Grace suggested a mini bookshelf to a place for the bilingual storybook, a small dictionary, and notebooks for anyone who wanted to practice. He agreed. A week later, the shelf stood near the vending machine with a handwritten sign, "Take a phrase, leave a phrase." People did. Grace began her half-day cross-training in guest relations the next week. She learned the software used for special requests and the tone used for delicate news. She also taught a 10-minute calm in a rush practice, which was really just 4 lines anyone could say, "I'm here. I hear you. I'm doing this now. I'll update you in 5 minutes." Those 4 lines worked in any language with a kind face and honest timing. The team tried them and found they did not make promises the hotel could not keep, they simply kept guests and staff close to the truth, which is where peace lives. On her other days, Grace kept her housekeeping hours. She still fixed a rug edge, aligned a chair, checked a vent, and wiped a mirror until it smiled back. Quiet work still filled her hands and heart. Now, though, she did it with a new sense of being part of a larger pattern. When she straightened a magazine, she sometimes tucked a small card under it in French and English that said, "If you need anything, press 0. We are here." The card was not just for French speakers. It was for anyone who needed the reminder that help is near. A new hire joined the team, Adil, young and careful, with a shy voice. On his first day, he asked Grace how to talk to guests without sounding stiff. She showed him a small trick: smile first with the eyes, then with the mouth, then speak. She also taught him one French line, "Puis-je vous aider," and one English line, "I'm happy to help." He practiced near the service elevator where the cable hummed. By lunch, he had both lines by heart. He thanked Grace and said, "It feels like carrying a key." She nodded. "It is a key," she said. "Use it with care." The owner visited and held a short, simple meeting in the staff lounge. There was no long speech. There were thanks and a clear plan to invest in training. The owner looked around the room and said, "We hired people for jobs, but we got people with lives. We will learn those lives." Grace felt seen but not singled out, which was exactly right. Before the owner left, Mr. Collins spoke in front of everyone. His voice was steady. "I made a mistake before this," he said. "I wanted smooth service so much that I forgot to ask what our people know. That won't happen again. Thank you, Grace, for reminding me to see." He turned to the team. "Thank you all for making a busy day gentle." Grace did not give a speech. She simply said, "We help each other help our guests. That is all." People clapped because simple truths carry well. In the weeks that followed, small proof kept arriving. A traveler who used sign language found the doorman ready with a few words made by hands. A guest from Beijing smiled when Jamal greeted her in Mandarin and showed her the lift with a clear gesture. A chef swapped a sauce without trouble because the kitchen supervisor could read an Italian label fast. The hotel did not become perfect, hotels never do. But it became kinder in the quick places, and guests feel that as clearly as they feel soft light. One evening, as Grace finished a shift, she opened her pocket notebook. On the first page, her old sentence looked back at her, "May I help you?" Under it, in neat new letters, she wrote the same line in French again, then added a third line in simple English for anyone who would read it later, "Help moves faster when it is seen." She closed the notebook and slipped it into her apron. On her way out, she stopped by the staff board. The skills map had grown. The ink made a small forest of words, languages, crafts, calm strengths, quiet powers. She pressed the paper flat with her hand so it would not curl. Then she walked through the glass doors into the evening, where the city moved and breathed. Behind her, the fountain sang its steady song. Ahead of her, a new day waited, full of all the tiny chances a person gets to make work more human. If someone had asked her to sum it up, she would have said it like this: yesterday, a manager panicked over a language; today, a team speaks more than one. And inside that change lived a simple truth she would carry forward: when people are seen for all their skills, everyone is served better.